Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on fiscalization in Spain. My name is Carlos Prallong. I belong to Business Development of Fiscal in Spain, and with me is Isabel Nogales, Country Manager of Fiscaly Iberia. Morning, Isabel.
Before we start, we would like to say that there is a demonstration very close to our office in Madrid. At the moment, it's not very noisy, but we hope that we can carry on with this webinar without a lot of noise. So I don't know if you can write in the chat that if you are hearing us okay, that would be very useful. And yeah, happy to have you all here.
It's overwhelming how many of you are with us this morning. Still, let's give a few minutes to see if we have some late arrivals before we go with the contents of the presentation. So please be patient, 2 minutes, and we'll get started.
Well, we have a lot of news also, right, Carlos? Because today is 23rd. Tomorrow ends the public hearing of the Veri Factu legislation, in particular the anti-fraud law and the ministerial order. And yeah, so we have prepared this webinar with the idea of give you the latest news we have on the topic and to clarify the main topics of the anti-fraud law. And well, I think we will wait 1 more minute until everybody is here.
Yes, I see still people joining, so we appreciate your patience, but we would like for everyone to be able to see the presentation as a whole. Still, for those who miss a part, if they join late, we'll offer a recording of it a few days after. So
yeah. Also for everybody who wasn't able to attend today, we are going to share with you in a couple of days the link to this webinar, and also you will find it in our social network and YouTube channel. But I think we can be starting at the moment. I think we are ready enough. Yeah.
Okay. Let's at least go through the contents that we want to cover today in our presentation, our little agenda. First, we want to give an overview of the anti-fraud law. Of course, that's what we're here today for. We're going to specify the entities subject to this law and how it affects all of us and all of them. The compliance option, this is important, the VeriFactu and Non-VeriFactu systems. Ever since we started speaking about the first drafts of this law, we've been referring to the VeriFactu regulation. VeriFactu is just one of the ways, one of the systems that we can comply with this anti-fraud law. We'll clarify that further on. We'll see also the deadlines, some of them about to expire tomorrow, as Isabel just said a minute ago. And the consequences, the fines that we will have to face in cases of non-compliance. And then if you allow us, we'll spend a few minutes explaining how Fiscaly can help you comply and how our solution can become handy to all of you. After that, we'll have a Q&A session. We would very much appreciate it if you held your questions till the end. So there's a chat where you can post all the questions, and when we get to the Q&A session, we'll make sure we address all of them. Even if we don't, for lack of time or whatever, we'll also share our contact details, so you can send us emails, you can call us, and not only now, but forever. You can just keep our contacts, and we'll be more than glad to solve any doubts or questions that you may have.
Yeah, I think with a brief introduction of the agenda we have prepared for today, we are ready to go into the fiscalization landscape.
Okay, so as for the landscape, this all gets triggered back in 2016 when the OECD recommends Spain to establish some fiscalization, point-of-sale fiscalization system. Where most countries in Europe already had something in place, or at least a project. So this recommendation is a little bit of a push to us. And well, in Spain, we have several tax agencies, up to 5. So from that moment, the Basque country decides to develop the ticket buy system. And the national agency decides to develop the anti-fraud law, which is the one we're facing today, as published in 2021.
It has been known as Veri Factu also. So this is one of the topics we will clarify. The anti-fraud law is what is important for us, the key legislation, and then the Veri Factu system. And I think with this, we are ready maybe to go into a bit more details into the anti-fraud law and what a Veri Factu system is.
Yes, just as we said before, in Spain there's up to 5 different tax agencies. So for the Basque country, the 3 provinces, they all have their own agency, and they have developed the ticket buy system. There's Navarra, which we'll see if it adheres to the ticket buy system, if it adheres to the national system or develops its own. It's still yet to be known. And for the rest of the territory, the national agency has developed the anti-fraud law. It has been approved in December 6th it was published, and now we're pending the publication of a ministerial order with all the technical requirements. A first draft was facilitated on January the 4th, and now we're on the public hearing process, which would end tomorrow, January 24th. Will be finished, and from then on, it's expected that any day this ministerial order will be approved, which sets the clock ticking for the 9 months that software vendors have to be, before the software vendors have to be able to provide a feasible solution, which is expected to be on October 24th.
Mm-hmm. If they manage to publish it before the end of this month, that is the information we got from the tax agency, directly from the tax agency from Spain, we will start counting the 9 months, and that would lead us to October 24 for point of sales vendors and July 2025 for the taxpayers. As my colleague Carlos already explained, the ministerial order is meant to be published quite soon. Tomorrow ends the public hearing, and we have sent also our observation from Fiskaly with every question you have been asking us during the last weeks. We have included everything, and we will also share with you the outcome we have from this public hearing. And now let's go a bit more in detail into what anti-fraud law consists of and what is considered a CIF, what the Spanish legislation defines as billing software.
Yep. Sistemas Informáticos de Facturación, that's what CIF stands for. It's computerized billing softwares. And it has 2 sides. There's there are 2 parts to it. One is intrinsic to the softwares. The softwares, and I'm going to read this literally from the law, must guarantee the integrity, conservation, accessibility, and traceability of the records, as well as their legibility by the competent agencies of the tax administration. This is, as I said, intrinsic to the software. The software must be able to do all this in order to comply with this legislation. And then the second part, which is how this software communicates, the communication established between the software and the tax agency. And I'm going to refer literally again to the law. The system must be able to transfer electronically in a continuous, secure, correct, complete, automatic, consecutive, instantaneous, and reliable manner all invoicing records to the tax authority. So that's the second part. First, all the intrinsic characteristics of the software, and then how the software communicates with the tax agency. Those are the 2 sides. And we have to focus also in who and how is affected by this law.
The who we are going to see it just in a few seconds. The how, just to say that this is the legal aspect of the anti-fraud law. We are going to be also offering a new webinar as soon as we have more information about the technical requirements, and where we are going to specify also all the technicalities and how to comply with this definition that Carlos just said in a technical way. And now let's move into who is affected by this legislation.
We have to, once again, it's a 2-parter. We have the taxpayers, which are all companies and self-employed professionals with an annual turnover of under 6 million euros. Why this figure? Because when you get 6 million or over 6 million, you have to comply with the SII, the Immediate Information Supply, which is a system that's already standing in Spain. And those who comply with SII do not have to comply with any extra VeriFactu or Non-VeriFactu system. And on the other hand, we have software vendors. And it's very important we pay attention to this point, because unlike other countries in Europe, here the authorities are paying a lot of attention with software vendors, and they're making them directly responsible for the compliance of the law. And who is affected? Well, every single software that's capable of generating invoices in Spain.
This is very important, because in order to continue selling your solution in the Spanish market, you will need to be compliant with the anti-fraud law before October 2024. Now let's go, I think, Carlos, in the moment we can arrive to the different ways of how to be compliant with the anti-fraud law.
Yeah, there's two different ways. I think there's a previous slide to that. Yes, well,
yeah,
because it's important that we understand this, because still, as of today, many of us refer to this legislation as the Veri Factu. The Veri Factu that's coming in live, the Veri Factu is going to be applied. Okay, there's two ways of complying, which is a Veri Factu mode and the non-VeriFactu mode. And then if we go to the next slide, please, Isabel. Okay, this is a very basic scheme, but in both systems, we're going to register any sort of operation. And this is going to generate a record that has to be properly chained, and it has to be compliant with specifications. And then that's when the difference comes. In a VeriFactu mode, all these records will be sent in real time to the tax authority. And for non-VeriFactu systems, instead of sending, we will apply an electronic signature on them. From then on, we generate the invoice, and this invoice will have to be stored the mandatory times, which can be up to 10 years. So if we go a little bit more detail, in the VeriFactu mode, first we're going to register every transaction. Then the chaining of records, we have to generate an XML file with all the fields that are stated in the law, and it has to be chained accordingly, like also it's been stated. It's not mandatory in a VeriFactu system to sign electronically, although we would recommend. I mean, nothing stops you, nothing in the law forbids you from doing it, and it's always an extra layer of security, so we would recommend that you do it. It's important towards any audit that may come in the future. What you have to do if you're in a VeriFactu system is that you have to send them in real time to the tax authority. And then once you generate the invoice must include the QR code with all this information. And of course, you must read in it Veri Factu. So anyone that looks at the invoice knows that it has been sent in real time to the tax authority. After that, it has to be stored, depending on the nature of the invoice itself, up to 10 years. Most of the cases 4 years, but up to 10 years, depending on the case. If we go to the non-VeriFactu mode, you will see that the registry is the same, the chaining of the records, the generation of the XML file, it is all the same. Only then it's mandatory that it's electronically signed. And this is a very key point, very important, the sending of the invoices. Okay, with a non-VeriFactu system, you do not have to send them in real time, but the law states that you must be able to do so. If the tax agency asks for any amount of invoices from a time gap or from a range of numbers, you have to be able to send them right away, which means you have to be connected to the internet and connected to the tax authority, even if you are not compliant in a VeriFactu mode. That's very important. I mean, we need to stress this point. But after that, after the electronic signature, which is generate the invoice, in this case, it has to include the QR code. It does not have to read VeriFactu mode for obvious reasons. After that, it has to be stored the very same with both systems. Up to 10 years, 4 years, most of the cases, depending on the nature of the invoice.
What is the main difference between these two systems? Well, Carlos, I think, explained very well what is the difference, that is the signing into the non-VeriFactu mode and the real-time sending of the records into the VeriFactu mode. The option of which one to choose relies on the taxpayer. And this is the key aspect, in particular for the point of sales vendor, because it's the taxpayer the one who decides. So there we also, from signing, we cover both. in order to you to be able to offer both systems to your end customers.
Exactly, because the taxpayer can decide if they choose a VeriFactu or a non-VeriFactu system. What's important to understand, if a taxpayer is working on a non-VeriFactu and want to switch into VeriFactu mode by sending the first invoice that send the first XML file they send to the authorities in a VeriFactu mode, will be understood that they switched into that mode and they have to stay in a VeriFactu mode until the end of that natural year, until midnight, December 31st that year. And then in January 1st, they decide again. The new year, they keep on going with VeriFactu, or they start with a non-VeriFactu mode. Given that, I can only stress what Isabel just pointed out. It's very important, it's of capital importance that softwares provide or facilitate both possibilities, because choosing one of them will limitate half of the options that the final taxpayer will have.
Yep.
And the software vendors, this is from the software vendors. As we said, every software must be connected to the internet for the submission of the records, even in a non-VeriFactu system. The fact that you don't send your invoices in real time doesn't mean that you don't have to be connected and you don't have to have the capability to send them right away. It has to be able to handle electronic certificates for submitting information and generating electronic signature for the billing records. Of course, that goes for both modes. Then it has to be able to submit billing records with the required structure, format, and code using secure communication protocols as stated in all these technical requirements that we've been mentioning and that we'll go through further once they're fully published. And last but not least, it must have the capability to receive and accurately process responses from the tax authorities. So as you see, the connection with the tax authority is mandatory and of capital importance in both VeriFactu and non-VeriFactu systems.
Exactly. Also, they need to be carried on also the validations. This is very important because the tax agency will give us an answer to every record we send, accept it, reject it, and several validations that we also consider into our signing a solution, as well as we do for the ticket buy system.
Okay, so now, as we said, we're going to go through deadlines. Let's have a timeline. On 2021, as we said before, this law got approved, and on the December last year, the technical requirements were approved. On December 6th, it was published, pending a ministerial order that will go through the technicalities and the most technical aspects of this law. As Isabel announced before, there's been a draft published, was published on January 4th, and now it's in a public hearing period, which ends tomorrow, January 24th. Once that period finishes, it'll be a matter of days before the ministerial order itself will be published, and it gets the clock ticking. From then on, we have 9 months. Software vendors have 9 months to offer a perfectly compliant solution to all the customers, and the taxpayers and the customers then have a period of another 9 months, more or less, until the deadline, which is set in July 1st, 2025. But we are expecting that many taxpayers will get compliant, will join the VeriFactu and non-VeriFactu systems way before that, because the tax agencies are announcing some quite attractive benefits for those who do. So we're expecting that once the deadline for the software vendors expires presumably in October 24, there'll be a lot of taxpayers already wanting to get it adopted to the new systems.
Exactly. We will have this grace period between October this year and July next year for the taxpayer to look for a new software who is compliant with the anti-fraud law. Also, we mentioned that in previous webinars, but it's important to know that Spain at the moment had at least 300,000 business that has an old cash register, which means they will need to be replaced and they will need to find a new software solution that is compliant and of course that is updated, because the previous one, for example, they don't have internet connection that at the moment is a requirement. So also it's a new opportunity to every country, to every company who want to enter into a new country, in this case in Spain, to know that it's the right timing to position your product in the market, and of course to be one of the first ones to be compliant with the anti-fraud law. And I think that's it. Let's go to a very important point, that is the penalties for non-compliant systems.
Yeah, this is a question that many of you have been addressing us in the last weeks. Like, what are the penalties for non-compliance? Okay, on the side of the taxpayer, it can be up to 50,000 euros per year using a software that's non-compliant with the anti-fraud law, up to 50,000 euros. But for the software vendors, as we said, unlike other countries in Europe where the software vendors have none of the responsibility of compliance, here in Spain, software vendors can get fined up to 150,000 euros per year and license sold depending on the cases. So we're talking about very, very serious consequences. So, and the need to be compliant, that it's a desperate need because the fines are really, really serious in this case.
And also, I think it's worth notice here that as you can see by the penalties, the responsibility is even higher in the case of the software developer. You can see that it's 3 times more than the taxpayer. And this is an aim to avoid systems in the market, software or product out there that are not compliant. So they first want to be sure that every software vendor provide a compliant solution, so that this reduce the possibility of the taxpayer to be using a system that is not compliant.
So
as you can see, very strict here. Go for it.
No, as I said, like, given how complicated this can get to be, how challenging this can get to be, and how serious the fines can get to, I think it's important to have guarantees that your solution is fully compliant. So maybe Isabel wants to explain in a couple of minutes how Fiskaly can help you navigate these turbulent waters.
Well, I think most of you already know who Fiskaly is. For those who maybe it's the first time that you get in touch with us, or that you join one of our webinars, we are Fiskaly, an international fiscalization solution provider. We operate in different markets in Europe. At the moment, we offer SignDE, SignET, and SignES. That means fully compliant solution with the country fiscalization requirement in 3 countries. With SignES, we cover not only the anti-fraud law and Veri Factu and Non-VeriFactu system, but also ticket buy in the past country. And as Carlos already announced, Navarra, who is one of the regions of Spain who has their own tax agency, we will also develop solution for that, as well for every company who is in the Canary Island, as well as Balearic and Ceuta and Melilla. So we will cover the whole territory of Spain. And we are also expanding into France and Italy for those who operate in different markets in Europe. At the moment, we are very happy to say that we work with more than 650,000 point of sales in the whole Europe and growing. So hopefully we will be able to cover all your needs, not just in Spain, but in different markets. And just a very short introduction to SignES. As said, it's only one API who covers multiple legislation. Today we didn't talk about the Ley Crefe, what is the law who announced the e-invoicing in Spain in B2B transaction. We will also cover that with SignES. We'll keep you updated on that, since we don't have updates since the last 2 months that they published the last news on this topic. Validation system. So we have developed a system also that double check that everything that we send to the tax agency is correct in the format they required, so that we can avoid rejection on any kind of troubles when getting back answer from them. Free updates. This is happening. We know for everybody who has been dealing with ticket buy before, it's very common that after the first month they will have many updates on minor and major changes. We cover everything with SignES so that you can be relaxed and know that Fiskaly is taking care of everything in this regard. And of course, free demo to every of our product. You can access to our dashboard, well and open documentation to each of our APIs, and of course a very nice team, dev support, who will be able to answer every question you may have in different languages. And I think with that, we have covered all the topics that we have prepared for today, and we will be happy also to answer some of your questions.
So yeah, we seem to have some questions there, and
let's see. Let's go. Sarah, can someone have access to this PDF later? Yeah, sure. We will share with you this presentation as well as the whole recording of the webinar. So everybody who attended or wasn't able to attend will receive an email from us with all the information.
Yeah, some of you forward some questions before in advance about the certification process. Maybe Isabel, you would like to shed some light over it.
Mm-hmm. You mean to the question, Carlos, that was raised at the moment?
No, the ones that we received this.
Every question that we have we received in the previous day. We also, some of them we have already answered. For some of them we don't. So we decided to directly address this to the tax agency with our observation that we sent for the public hearing, and we will be sharing this with you also in the next days. I think maybe to answer some of the questions that have arrived at the moment is, in case the fiskaly API are not reachable, can we switch to a non-VeriFactu mode temporarily? Well, the answer at the moment will be no. Why? Because when a taxpayer is already reporting through the VeriFactu system, they cannot switch to the non-VeriFactu. So they need to be in the system for at least the fiscal year, until the 31st of December of the year they have decided to start sending via VeriFactu. Of course, there is ways, and the incident happens, so it's going to be an offline mode for those cases where we don't have internet connection, the taxpayer, the tax agency server is not reachable. This is also something we want to detail probably in our next webinar, how we will be handling the offline scenarios. But at the moment, we can already say that in the structure of the XML file for registered and a new transaction, there is already a field for incidents that we can say yes. There is several of them we can list, and we will be giving more detail on that, but probably this will be a way of communicating to the tax agency that we have not been able to reach either the server or fiskaly API, and this is the reason why we didn't send in real time. Let's go maybe to other questions. Is one API for all the Spain and Basque Country? Well, yes, it is. As said, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for our customers and partners to integrate SignES. That's the reason why it's a very simple API. We manage time from 1 day to up to 5 days to integrate the whole API. And also we carry on, as said, all the certification process, so you need to certify also your software solution. And yes, we cover everything, all the Spanish territory. We don't want to pass this responsibility on your side and have it complicated just because the Spanish fiscalization it is. We cover every legislation with SignES. Ticket by Batuf also, for those who are familiar with the legislation, particularly in Vizcaya region, in Vizcaya province. And of course, electronic invoice as soon as we have the technical requirement for it.
And we have another question that says, what are the advantages of a non-VeriFactu mode? Why give merchants option to use it?
Very good question.
It's our understanding that they are offering this solution for those who may have a non-very stable internet connection. But that's a guess. There's many hypotheses up there. There's all theories, but there's not an official statement as of why given this option. Unlike, for example, Ticket Buy that does not have any option but to send all the invoices in real time. So we understand it's to cover those with low internet connections or not very stable, but as I said, it's just a wild guess and there's no official statement on that.
And actually the most convenient way will be the VeriFactu mode. Why we said that? Because it's in a technical point of view, is not so complex. If we see the non-VeriFactu mode, the technical requirements are quite more complex in every aspect. We didn't go into detail today, but for example, it has an alarm system. When the system detects any kind of anomalies, any kind of weird behavior, An alarm system will be out there and block the software, and you cannot work with that, as well as, for example, an event log. So you have to register every event that has been registered, that had been the deal into the software. So we can see that the non-VeriFactu mode actually is more comprehensive in terms of security and the different ways of guarantee the integrity of the system than the VeriFactu mode. But the tax agency of Spain has decided to give the option to the taxpayer to decide. We will probably, for the VeriFactu mode, real-time communication is more secure, of course, and also the tax agency has already the data. Will be helping the taxpayer to complete formulas, to complete application they would like to deal with the tax agency. Since the tax agency, we already have this information on their side. This is some of the advantages. There are a lot of differences between ticket buy and VeriFactu technical requirement. Well, yes. Most important one is that ticket buy implies the real-time sending of the record as well as the signing. We have seen that in the anti-fraud law, these two requirements are real-time sending for VeriFactu, signing mandatory only for the non-VeriFactu mode. Also, as said, alarm system, event log, and we will also go into more details into the next with our next webinar for that. But yeah, we assume at the beginning that it will be quite similar to ticket buy, and now, since more information is out there, we start to see that it's not going to be so similar to ticket buy. But for our partner, you don't need to worry. We cover all the requirements on our own, so that for you, it's not such a big deal, the differences.
Okay, there's another question there about if we could speak a bit about the interaction between VeriFactu and electronic invoicing to make it very, very brief. We don't have much information about the electronic invoicing. The ley crea y crece is there, but the technical requirements have not been specified yet. It said that they want to find as many synergies as they can between both systems, Factura Electrónica and VeriFactu and Non-VeriFactu. But as of today, we cannot go much further into detail because it hasn't been published. They haven't gone into technicalities yet. Maybe some
we know so far that in this regard, so they come from different ministers. The tax agency is the one taking care of the fiscalization system that will lead the anti-fraud law and VeriFactu, and the e-invoicing is from the Minister of Public Affairs and Digitalization. And since they are quite related, we are covering both. They are coordinating each other, also the government itself, just to check that part of the technical requirement developed for VeriFactu and the anti-fraud law can also be used for the e-invoice. One example is the dealing with the same format, XML formats, but the e-invoicing will be covering more, Isabel, Eddie, so it's going to be probably more extensive, and they will need some kind of transformation within format for the e-invoice. We have also a question for Mark. How will the fiscal integration work? Well, very simple. As said, we have on our API. All the documentation of our API can be found on our developer website. It's very well structured. You will see an integration guide for existing customers, so everyone who is using already our SignD or SignET API, and also for new customers. I would say so far the experience has been very easy. Couple of days integration. You have the full support of our dev team in case you have some questions or you want to know how this affects your own system. And
as for the other question, it says in most other countries it's about payment flows, not the invoices. I understand Spain's version will be focused on invoices, not payments, and that's completely right. It's generation of invoices, just a ticket buy in the Basque Country, and VeriFactu and Non-VeriFactu are focused on the invoices. Payments will be covered by the Factura Electrónica invoicing. That's going to focus on payments, but
also
as well, but not this VeriFactu. The anti-fraud law focuses entirely on invoicing.
And also, regardless of the way how you pay, this was a very interesting question, because in other countries we see that you only need to fiscalize these payments who were paid with cash. And in Spain, it's not the case. Regardless how you pay, card, cash, back transfer, everything needs to be fiscalized, every transaction, including e-commerce, for example. You can see that different countries, for example, they don't fiscalize e-commerce, since everything happened already online and can be easily trackable. This is not the case. Okay, in Spain, this is very extent, and every transaction that you can imagine and has been including an exchange of invoice, goods, and money, however you paid it, need to be fiscalized.
Okay, and well, the other questions we have, we'll make sure we get back to all of you, but we would love to, if you could spend a few seconds with us to help us by answering a few questions we have for you. Maybe you find it in the chat version. It would be very helpful for us to try to understand how the market's feeling, how the market's breathing as of today. So it will only take you just 1 minute. Could you please help us by answering, do you find complying with the new Spanish anti-fraud law challenging?
So do you think that maybe it's more complex than the previous one, or that the one you have been dealing so far, it is not the most complex system you have been dealing with? This is, we will be curious to know your answer in a couple of seconds. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next question.
The next question will be,
I think it's up. I think it, yeah.
What approach? Maybe we can start with this one since it's already there.
Oh, it's already open. Okay.
And this is how you expect to address these changes. Internally, you have your own dev team and you prefer to take care yourself. You prefer to realign a fiscal partner and give this part in the hand of an expert and focus on your own software. Are you evaluating, open to everything, or are you considering other options?
Okay, thumbs up on
Thank
that
you
one.
very much. Okay, and well, this is very informative question. Do you think there is enough information available for the Spanish anti-fraud law, or there are still many questions that wasn't addressed? I see here a clear no. So I think all of you are expecting probably more information on the topic. We also have the same feeling, actually, that we are expecting to have more information quite soon to answer all the questions that are still open. And also about your feeling, what do you think is the most challenging requirement that it has been announced so far?
It can be the handling of taxpayers' digital certificates, the sending and validation to the tax agents and services, certification process, or others. See, it's a few seconds to pick. I think multiple choice is accepted, so just take your time. And as I said, this is very, very helpful to us to understand your needs and to understand where we have to focus our efforts in order to be more helpful.
Okay.
So
I think
we're
have
done.
all of them.
So we can only thank you so very much for all this help that you gave us. And once again, please do not hesitate to contact. There's contact details both for Isabel and myself. Do not hesitate to contact. We'll be more than happy to answer to any question you may address us and to stay in touch. And as we said, the ministerial order is to be published any day now. Once we have all the full array of technical details, we will organize a more technical webinar. This was meant to cover all the laws and all the regulations that have been published. For the technical one, we'll organize one as soon as we have it. We'll just in a matter of days we'll organize it so we can clear also all your doubts on that field.
And every question you may have that maybe you didn't have the time or to answer, to raise this question today, please feel free to send it to us. There you have our emails, and we will also recommend you to subscribe to our newsletter as well as our group in LinkedIn so that you can be up to date with every change in the legislation. And very happy to have you all here, and thank you very much for attending, and we really hope it was useful for you.
As we said before, we will send to you the link to the recording of this session whenever we have it up on the internet. And once again, thank you so very much for attending.
Ciao, ciao.